bit of a confession. I've had this piece sitting in my garage for several months, which seems to be a common theme, but I really wasn't sure what to do with this one until about a month or so ago. You see, I picked this up back in May of 2022, and I wasn't really inspired by it because there's really not much wrong with it. It's kind of funny how things work out, though. I was over visiting my friends, and I noticed that they could use an upgrade, and so I decided that this piece would fit their needs perfectly, so perhaps this was just perfect timing. At the start of this project, I wasn't sure what was going on with the veneer. I could tell there was some intentional black pigment marks on the finish from the factory, but there was something else going on with the veneer, and my initial thoughts were that they were cigarette burns. Another confusing piece about this dresser is that this is actually a founder's piece, and I did not know this initially. It was actually pointed out to me by a friend of mine on Instagram, and I'll link his information below because he does some really awesome restorations, so make sure you go give him a follow if you're on Instagram. But the inner drawer on this dresser actually says Bradford Fine Furniture, but that is not the maker of the piece. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're going through and trying to figure out who made a piece and where it originated from. That label would lead me to believe that probably Bradford Fine Furniture was the store that the piece was actually sold at. The metal drawer slides stuck out a little bit on the bottom, so I wasn't able to easily stand the narrower drawers up. So to resolve that, I just stuck a dowel underneath the opposite side, and that helped it stay upright. I started off with my carbide scraper. I could have used it for the entire piece, but switched to using Stripwell's QCS Vintage Finish Remover after trying to scrape the top. The finish didn't appear damaged at all, which is inconsistent with my first assumption that those marks are from cigarette burns. I only had to do the standard 2 coats of QCS, and for the more stubborn areas, I just used some steel wool with QCS to remove the finish. Once the finish was removed, I was able to spend some time looking closer at the veneer. I knew that it definitely wasn't walnut, but the marks in the wood were definitely in the veneer before it was applied to the piece. You can see the marks in the wood that lead to the dark spots, almost like tunnels, and I had a moment of thinking, maybe these were wormholes. But I was able to backtrack and find out that this specific piece was covered in pecan. From what I could find, the pecky part seems to be caused by localized decay in the wood. Since the pieces were book matched on the top, you can actually see where the marks look like they're somewhat mirrored from each section. Another unique find on this piece was the leveling feet at the bottom. Most pieces that have these cupboard-style bases seem to have damage on the bottom due to moisture, and I suspect that the adjustable feet may have helped to keep it higher off the ground. There was hardly any damage on this chest of drawers, and the vast majority of it was on or in the original finish. On a normal project, I would typically do 2 rounds of sanding, starting with 150 and then going up to 180. But for this project, I just used 180 and it leveled out the substrate. For the stain, I'm going to use a custom stain that is a mix of General Finishes Java Gel Stain and General Finishes Antique Walnut Gel Stain. I just approximate 50% of each stain color, and that's going to allow me to have a rich brown tone. Also remember, if you're mixing stains together, especially gel stains, mix it together more than you think you should. The reason I chose to use Java the Nut on this instead of just putting a natural finish on it was the only request that I had for this piece was to make the finish dark. So this is going to give me a nice rich color tone to work with, and then if I need to change it afterwards, I can use some toner and we can adjust the color. Before I apply the stain, I'm going to do 2 things. The first thing is I'm going to use a tack cloth to collect any of that dust that may have stuck to the piece as I was working on it. Even though I brush it off, typically there's still some dust left on the piece, and I don't want that ending up drying in my stain. The second step I'm going to do is apply some pre-stain conditioner. I've never worked with pecan before, but everything I've read tells me it's not fun to stain, so this will be a precautionary measure. Pre-stain conditioner is intended to give you a more even finish. It's really important to use it on woods like pine or poplar, unless you're trying to get a more blotchy or rustic looking finish. I actually ended up taping the inner parts of the chest of drawers so that my stain line would be crisp. This is just such a dark stain that having an uneven line just isn't going to look very good. Once the stain had enough time to dry, I applied some shellac to see the overall color of the piece. I was not happy with the color. It was still a little bit too yellow for what I was going for, so I wanted to apply a toner lacquer before I applied the finishing coats of lacquer. The drawer sliders were incredibly squeaky. I initially cleaned the track out when I was cleaning the inside of the drawer boxes, but that did not help. These metal slides are just 4 ball bearings that slide along the bottom metal track. So first I'm going to use silicone-based lubricant and see if that helps to lubricate the bearings. That kind of worked, but not really. It still squeaks, so we're gonna use some multi-purpose synthetic grease. There is only so much time in life. Sometimes it can seem like we're in a vice. Just think back and reflect, let go, and take the next step towards a new year filled with happiness and cheer.